You know, right at the very heart of Christianity, there is this profound mystery, this incredible question. How could one person be both fully God and fully human? Now, this isn't just some dusty old theological puzzle. It's a question that literally shaped empires, sparked massive church councils, and really defined the course of Western history. So today, we're going to unpack that amazing story. I think this line from the poet John Benjamin just captures the paradox perfectly. The whole idea of the infinite, all-powerful creator of the universe becoming a tiny, helpless human child, well, as he puts it, it's the most tremendous tale of all. It's a concept that really stretches our minds to the absolute breaking point. And let's be super clear about this. We're not talking about some kind of half-god, half-man figure, like a hero from Greek mythology. Nope. The belief was in someone who was 100% both at the exact same time. For the early Christian thinkers, this was everything. This wasn't just a brain teaser, it was a core truth they had to figure out and defend because it defined the very being they were worshiping. I mean, if you get this wrong, are you even worshiping God at all? Now, you might be thinking this was all just a quiet academic debate happening in some monastery library. Oh, not even close. In the 5th century, this abstract puzzle completely exploded into a full-blown political and religious crisis that pretty much threatened to tear the entire church apart. And believe it or not, it all started with a fight over a single name. Okay, so to get what happened, you need to understand there were two major schools of thought back then. On one side, you had the Alexandria school. Their big focus was on unity. Their slogan was, "The Word became flesh." They really zeroed in on the divine taking on a human form. But, and here's the risk, if you lean too hard that way, you can end up diminishing Jesus' actual humanity, almost like it gets swallowed up by the divine. Then, on the other side, you have the Antioch school. They were all about distinction. Their slogan was, "The Word assumed a man." They wanted to make it clear that the divine united with a complete human being. The danger there? Well, it can start to sound like you're talking about two separate people, a divine person and a human person working together, not one single person.
And the flashpoint, the thing that lit the fuse on this whole powder keg, was this one Greek word, Theotokos. For centuries, a lot of Christians had called Mary the Theotokos, which means God-bearer. For them, it was just a beautiful expression of faith. It makes sense, right? If Jesus really is God, then the woman who gave birth to him is, well, the mother of God.
But then, in the year 428, a new patriarch of Constantinople comes to town. His name is Nestorius, and he comes from that Antioch school of thought. And he publicly rejects this title. To him, calling Mary Theotokos was a theological disaster. He argued, look, Mary gave birth to the human Jesus, not the eternal God. He was terrified that the term blended the two natures together into some kind of mush, and he thought the mother of Christ was a much safer bet. And boy, did things escalate fast. Nestorius makes his challenge in 428, and just 3 years later, they call the Council of Ephesus, which ends up condemning his teaching. But that didn't really solve the root of the problem. The debate just kept raging for another 20 years, which finally led to another, even bigger council at a place called Chalcedon in 451. The goal this time? Settle this thing once and for all. So the big challenge for the Council of Chalcedon was to thread this incredibly fine needle. They had to find a formula that could somehow satisfy both sides, a formula that would affirm the unity that the Alexandrians loved, while also protecting the distinction that the Antiochians insisted on. It was a theological balancing act, and the entire future of the faith was hanging in the balance. A huge breakthrough, a real game changer, came from a letter written by Pope Leo the Great. He wrote that the distinctive character of each nature remaining intact and coming together into one person. This was the key. The unity wasn't a mixture where the two natures were blended, but two totally distinct natures that were perfectly united in a single person. And this led to the final formula. Christ is one person in two natures. And to make sure nobody could misinterpret it, the council came up with these 4 brilliant little phrases, like theological guardrails. The two natures exist without blending or change, so that shoots down any idea of a weird divine-human hybrid. And they exist without division or separation, which rejects any notion that you've got two separate beings acting together. So there you have it. The elegant solution that became the standard for Orthodox Christianity was this. The unity of Christ is found at the level of the person, while the duality, the two-ness, is found at the level of the natures. It was a masterful compromise that managed to hold this seemingly impossible paradox together, and it laid the doctrinal foundation for Christian art, worship, and thought for the next 1,500 years.
Okay, so with the question of who Christ is more or less settled, the theological spotlight started to shift. A new question, an equally massive one, began to emerge over the next several centuries.
The whole conversation pivoted. It moved from talking about Christ's being to talking about his doing. The question became, if this is who he is, this one person who is both fully God and fully man, then what exactly did he do for us? What did he accomplish for humanity's salvation? The focus moved from identity to action.
One of the most influential answers to that what question came centuries later from a medieval thinker named Anselm. He basically framed it like a cosmic legal problem. So, step one, he argued that human sin against an infinite God is an infinite offense against God's honor. Step two, since we humans are finite, there's just no way we can make an infinite payment to set things right. So now we're stuck in a dilemma. The only solution? You'd need a God-man, a figure whose human actions had infinite value, precisely because he was also divine. Only he could offer the perfect life and sacrifice needed to pay that infinite debt.
So, for centuries, these classical formulas from Chalcedon and Anselm really held the field. But as the world moved into the modern era, they started to face some really powerful new challenges from philosophy and science. And that forced people to start asking those very old questions in entirely new ways. The first huge challenge was a turn inward. Thinkers like René Descartes shifted everyone's focus to the conscious, subjective self. You know, his famous, I think, therefore I am. And all of a sudden, the debate wasn't about two abstract natures. It was about one concrete consciousness. The big question became, well, what was Jesus' own self-awareness like? Did he think he was God? This totally changed the game, turning a problem of metaphysics into a problem of psychology. The second major challenge came from the rise of historical criticism. Scholars started this huge project to apply what they saw as scientific objectivity to the Gospels. They tried to peel back all the layers of church doctrine, what they called the Christ of faith, to get at the real guy underneath, the so-called Jesus of history. But this whole quest ran into a massive problem, and it's captured perfectly in this quote from George Tyrrell. He realized that historians who went looking for the real Jesus just kept finding a reflection of themselves. A 19th century liberal would look down the well of history and see a 19th century liberal Jesus smiling back. A 20th century revolutionary would find a revolutionary Jesus. The dream of pure objectivity, it seemed, was maybe just an illusion. And that pretty much brings us to today. After 2,000 years of intense debate, from bishops and emperors to philosophers and historians, the questions are still with us. Sure, the language has changed, the focus has shifted, but that fundamental mystery of that tremendous tale continues to fascinate and challenge us. So the real question for us is, how do we, looking back through all of that history, even begin to ask these questions today?